So I think one game, and I'm just going to put it out there that I think you can go against traditional betting wisdom with is this. So this past week, the Miami Dolphins were minus, it got up to what, 12 and a half against the Giants.
Yep.
I think it started at 9.5. And I know at least I think you did too, but I know I got in pretty early on that and didn't really even need it. Even 12 and a half ended up going over, or covering. But, I think I look at this. They've got a matchup at home again against a Carolina team that is not good. They can't score. I mean, Adam Thielen looked good last week. I get it. They're trying, but it's like they have to try so hard to muster offense. So I just don't see how they're going to keep up. And that Carolina defense, unfortunately for them, is not as good as I think they or a lot of us felt they might be. And some of that might be the futility of the offense, which is, putting them in difficult spots. But they can't stop the run. And, that's a problem because what we're seeing is when the Dolphins are running the ball, they're running it really, really, really well. And then, oh, by the way, what happens when you have to, show up to stop the run? Then you get Tyreek Hill over the top and different things like that going on. So my point is this. They covered a big number against the Giants, and I think the Panthers are arguably worse. So I'm looking at that and saying, this just doesn't seem like a game that can be close. And let me say one other thing. Not only did the Dolphins cover that number, they didn't necessarily play great in that game. They turned the ball over 3 times. So, it's kind of one of those things where it's not like, oh, they played a flawless game and they won by 17. They didn't play that great of a game and they won by 17. So I think when you look at this Panthers team, even if the Dolphins aren't on their A game, I just think the talent disparity, to me, this line should be more of a minus 17. So right now you can still get it at 2 touchdowns. I think you got to lay the huge number here. And, it sounds crazy that that's the game that I go to, but the math, the logic, all of it just checks out for me.
It's so hard to go to a game that has a spread this big, but I can't disagree with you. And I'm like the turnover guy. So I was going to go exactly where you just went, which is and not only did they turn the ball over a lot, but they didn't have any takeaways. So they lost the turnover battle by 3.
Yep.
When you have a -3 turnover differential historically, and granted, it matters which teams are playing, obviously, but historically, you have like an 8% chance of winning. And they won by 17. Yeah. So if they don't do that, it is utter destruction. Yeah. And I did see some stats today where Bryce Young's passer rating has come up each of the last 3 weeks. So he is playing a little bit better. But I mean, they were having a hard time scoring, period. I think against this Dolphins defense, they may be able to put up a handful of points. Last week I said I like Carolina's team totals under. I probably don't like that quite as much this week, especially if it's, 30-3 out of the gate and they're just, going to go for it on every 4th down or whatever. But I haven't bet it yet, but I think I need to go do it probably because this should be a 20-plus point difference. Because you're right. I think Carolina, the Giants are really bad. But I think Carolina's at least like a tick worse. Maybe not way, way worse, but they're a little bit worse. And the Dolphins played a bad game. I mean, the points that you made, the only other thing I'll say, which this doesn't even affect the way that I would really view this game, Devon Achane has a knee injury, and he's uncertain for next week. But let's say he sits out. Do you really feel like that's going to be so problematic in this game? I don't. So... yeah, I like it. And I mean, you could look at they're going to be high, but you could look at Miami's team totals over here again as well.
Correct. Yep.
Where did they end up last? What was their score last week?
So their team total was 30.5. They got to 31. So they just squeaked by. But keep in mind, they had 31 in the 3rd quarter. So if they really probably needed to score, they could have kept going. Gosh. And keep in mind that they threw a pick 6 on the 2-yard line. I mean, which I'm still bitter about. I think I mentioned to you, I had -7.5 first half Miami. And that cost me that. I was like, oh, good. We're going to be up by 21 going into half. This is great. And that's all right. Though.
Brutal.
But, again, I think it just points to the fact that even when you throw a pick 6 on the other team's goal line, you're still covering a huge number. So I think you're right. Both of those are in play again.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, yeah, you just think if they didn't have the 3 turnovers, the pick six you just talked about on the goal line, I mean, 45-50 isn't out of the question in that game once again. So this is a team that it's not a fluke that they're putting up points in the mid-30s, even to the 40s. So those are a couple bets I like, Yanni. I think I'll probably end up making both of those this week.